Hi, like Louise told you, I'm Didi and I am an analyst at Intelligence Group. And today I would like to discuss two developments with you. The one is about the job board market and the other one is about candidate experience. And I was quite happy actually with the ending of the panel because in the second part of my presentation I'll share some insights with you as well about the candidate experience. Oh wait, I have the clicker right here. But before I do so, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the data we have, because I'm going to talk a lot about data in this presentation, and I think it comes in handy when you know where we got our data from. So, what does our data look like? We focus mainly, well, actually only on recruitment and labor market data, and we receive this data through our Global Talent Acquisition Monitor. I know it's a mouthful. We just call it GTAM. And in 2018 and 19, we've conducted research and collected data of more than 120,000 respondents in 28 different European countries. We combined our own data together with the Eurostat data, which has more than 13 million records. And we also have an integration with Textkernel, who is providing insights about the demand of the market, while we focus mainly on the supply, or at least our data does. So we have a lot of data, and I hear you thinking, okay, so what's your business model? What do you do with data? And I think I can explain you best by showing this, well, path really. You could say this is a lifeline of a person, and on different stages in someone's life, we can provide insights based upon our data about decisions they have to make. For example, the education choice, we can tell you which educations have the best perspectives when graduating from college, and which occupations are the best then, or at least the best, are most chanceful when you've graduated. But also, for example, the fourth one is, at least in the Netherlands, it's when you want to buy a house, you have to have a permanent contract in order to get a mortgage. But of course, not everybody has a permanent contract. So if you have a flex contract and you have an occupation which is very chanceful in the future, we say, or at least you get a certificate from us, and we can say, since you have a very good occupation for the future, you could get a mortgage. So that's from the person's perspective, but we also have a lifeline, if it were to say so, from a company. And with our data, we can provide insights about forecast to the future. We try to be predictive in how many people do you need this year, and based upon this and the trends we see in the job board market or in the labor market, we expect you to need this much people in the future. Also, the second one, recruitment. Maybe some of you have already met Geert-Jan or me during these 2 days. And we've been handing out some reports as well from our European recruitment dashboard, which is, well, it has the word recruitment. And it's really based upon giving insights to employers in different countries and target groups about how many there are available from a certain occupation, what they find interesting and important in a job, but also how they orientate on the market. So this is a little bit about us, and our data is integratable via an API, but I came to talk about the job board trends and the candidate experience. So let's first have a look. This is how job seekers orientate on a new job, and this is the European average. So what we see here is that the most, or the preferred orientation site is job sites, followed by search engines and company sites. But I have to say, this is the European average. And of course, we are one Europe, but every country is very different from another in Europe, because every country has their own habits, cultures, languages. And to stick to the last one, if I were to say hello to you, I could say hello, and probably everybody knows that it's hi. But if I were to say bak to you, which is hello in Croatia, then you wouldn't know. So let's have a look again at the orientation channels, and I'll highlight 3. starting with job boards or job sites. We see here the chart, and the chart is saying how the more red a country is, the more they use job boards, and the more it goes to pink, the less they use job boards. And then in the chart on the right, you see the top 5 countries who use job board or job sites the most, the European average, and the top 5 countries who use job boards the least in their quest for seeking a new job. So we see, for example, that in the Netherlands, 6 out of 10 job seekers will try to find a job via job sites, while in Slovakia, for example, it's only 1 out of 5. Then let's move on to uploading a resume in a database. Here you see again the same rules apply. The darker red a country is, the more it's being used in that country, and also the top 5, the European average, and the top 5 countries who's using it the less. So we see that uploading a resume is very popular in Estonia, but not at all in Portugal. And it's really important to know about these differences between countries. I still have one more coming up for you. Job agents, or others said job alerts, also very different. The same rules apply again. The more red a chart is, or a country is, the more it's being used, and the less it's being used, it's more to pink. So here we see it's more in the middle of Europe, around Slovakia, the Czech Republic, that's using this as a orientation channel. Since this is a job board event, we thought it might be interesting to have a look at the top 3 job boards per country. And before I go to the next slide, I would like to tell you a little bit more about how we calculated it. Because respondents can fill out multiple job sites in our surveys. And what we did is we added up the total. So for example, if they had multiple answers, and the total will be 200%. We also looked at the percentage of how many times it has been named for the top 3 job boards. So, for example, if those top 3 together are named 100%, we divided it by 200%, and then you get a percentage of 50%. Does it make sense? Okay, let's see. So I call this sheet the preference share of top 3 job board leaders, and then we see all the 28 countries. Yet again, the more red it is, the more dominant it is. So what we see here, that in some countries, the job board market is very dominated by the top 3 biggest job boards, while in other countries, there's much more competition, which you'll see at the bottom of the graph, because the top 3 only, in Italy, for example, only have 39% of the market. So this is a nice insight, but I thought it would be nice to put this in perspective together with the usage of job sites, like the first slide we saw. And that's what we did. So what we'll see, well, you already see the headline, but I'll show the details with you. So what we see on the vertical axis is the share top 3, which are the numbers we saw on the last slide. But if I were to translate it freely, you could also say the higher you are, the more dominant the market is, and the lower you are, the less dominant or more competition there is on the market. And then if we have a look at the horizontal axis, we see the usage of job sites by active job seekers. And if I were to translate that freely, you could say the maturity of the market. So the higher the percentage, the more it's being used, and the more the market is mature. So before I show you, because I know you want to see the results, I want you to picture like four squares. And when I start in the top left, those are the markets where there's a lot of domination, but there's not that much. It's not that mature yet, the market. So that's really high potential markets in those countries. And if you move over to the right, still in the top, those are mature markets, and this is also where it's very dominant. Moving on to the right, at the bottom, those are the markets that are quite mature already, but are also very competitive. And then in the left, well, that's a question mark, because it's not that mature yet, but there's not that many dominance yet. So let's go over to the results. Then you'll see that these are the countries which are in well, the potential zone. These are the countries where there are lots, where the market is already mature, but there's also a lot of competition. Finland is actually the only one who's moving around the top corner, right? Then we have Italy on the left, and all the other countries, of course. And you'll get the slides, so don't worry about the figures. I'm just waiting for you to take a picture. Okay, so this has been about the top 3 share, but I thought it would also be interesting to see which is the preferred job site per country. And now we're just looking at how many percentage of the people, what percentage of the job seekers named this job board. And that's what we're going to see in the next graph. So, yeah, here you'll see, for example, in the bottom right, that Indeed.nl, which is the biggest job board in the Netherlands, but also in Belgium, Indeed.be. But what we also see is that almost every country has a different market leader. And, which struck me the most, 96% of the Bulgarians named jobs.bg. That's like almost everybody is using that job board. So I thought it might be nice to have a look at the European biggest job boards as well. Those are these 4. So it's Indeed, Monster, InfoJobs, and LinkedIn. And I also thought it would be nice to have a look in which countries these are the biggest. So that's what we did, of course. So let's go to Indeed, which is the biggest in the UK, followed by the Netherlands and Ireland. For Monster, it's Finland, Sweden, and Germany. For InfoJobs, it's only Spain and Italy, since they're only active in those 2 countries, and Brazil as well, but this presentation is about Europe. And LinkedIn, which is, well, the biggest in the Netherlands. And in 2019, we also conducted some research for some countries, we conducted research in 2018 and 19. So then we could see the developments, which we'll highlight here. Although the UK, although Indeed is the biggest in UK, they are losing share over there. But in the Netherlands, they are gaining. In France, they are losing. And in Belgium, they're gaining. For Monster in Germany, they're losing. In the Netherlands, LinkedIn has been quite the same in 2018 as it has been in 2019. And in France, it has been going up. So this is what I wanted to share with you about job boards. And now I'd like to move on to candidate experience, which has been a topic mostly discussed the last few days. And I found 2 men who are willing to do the introduction for me.
So tell me again about the hash bar.
Okay, what you want to know?
Hash is legal now, right?
Yeah, it's legal, but it ain't 100% legal. I mean, you just can't walk into a restaurant, roll the joint, and start puffing away. I mean, they want you to smoke in your home or certain designated places.
And those are hash bars.
Yeah, it breaks down like this, okay? It's legal to buy it, it's legal to own it. And if you're the proprietor of a hash bar, it's legal to sell it. It's legal to carry it, but that doesn't matter. Just get a load of this, all right? If you get stopped by a cop in Amsterdam, it's illegal for them to search you. I mean, that's the right that cops in Amsterdam don't have.
Oh, man, I'm going. That's all it is to it. I'm fucking going.
No, baby, you think it the most. But you know what the funniest thing about Europe is?
What?
It's the little differences. I mean, they got the same shit over there that they got here, but it's just there, it's a little different.
Example.
All right, well, you can walk into a movie theater in Amsterdam and buy a beer. And I don't mean just like a little paper cup, I'm talking about a glass of beer. And in Paris, you can buy a beer in McDonald's. And you know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese in Paris?
They don't call it a quarter pounder with cheese?
Oh, man, they got the metric system. They wouldn't know what the fuck a quarter pounder is.
And what do they call it?
They call it Royale with cheese.
Royale with cheese.
That's right.
What do they call a Big Mac?
Big Mac's a Big Mac, but they call it Le Big Mac.
Le Big Mac. What do they call a Whopper?
I don't know, I didn't go on a Burger King. You know what they put on French fries in Holland instead of ketchup?
What?
Mayonnaise. I seen them do it, man. They fucking drown them in this shit.
Yeah.
Well, I think most of you know this scene. Of course, it's from Pulp Fiction. But the conclusion is it's about the little differences because, like I told you earlier in this presentation, European countries differ from another. So, talking about candidate experience, first I would like to start with the European average and in the important factors in application process. So this is from a candidate perspective. What do you find important when you apply for a job? Well, 45% says personal feedback on my application, and this is actually something Kasia touched yesterday as well. Give them feedback at all, and preferably also personal feedback. But also 1 out of 3 finds it important to get solid reasons for rejection. So, okay, I didn't get the job, but why didn't I get the job? Can you tell me? And also 3 out of 10 finds it important to have an easy online application procedure. But since we're in London today, I took the liberty of making an example out of the UK. So if we compare the European average expectations together with, compared to the United Kingdom, we see that there are quite some differences. And there are actually 2 which I want to highlight. And those are the second and the third. Because what you see is that people who are seeking for a job in the UK find it more interesting to know why they have been rejected, but they don't really mind that much to follow a longer application process. So what it tells me is that they are willing to do the work of putting out an application, but they want to get something for it in return in terms of substance, like why am I not the right candidate for this job? When talking about expectations, we also ask about the application process in weeks, and so these numbers are in weeks, and what candidate expects. And then you see that the European average job seeker expects that procedure takes about a little bit more than 3 weeks. And to clarify myself, an application process means from applying to a job to be hearing that you're hired or not. And you see there is a huge difference because in Ukraine about 10 days, they expect about 10 days to be hearing back on their application or to be hired, while for Denmark it's 3 times as long. So this means if you're a company who's based in Denmark and you're going to recruit in Ukraine and you are used to taking about 30 days, someone from Ukraine will say, well, I haven't heard back in 10 days, so probably they don't fancy me that as much, and will probably won't be bothered again to apply for your organization. We also looked at job interviews, so how many job interviews do they expect? And also here you'll see there are differences between countries. Of course, we have this data for all 28 countries, but we put the countries in here which are different the most. So this is also interesting to put in a chart together. By now you should know I love charts and data. So here you'll see the European average. And on the vertical axis we'll see the number of job interviews that candidates expect. And on the horizontal axis we'll see the expected time of procedure in weeks. Well, what we see happening in France and Belgium is that they take a lot of time, but they also want to conduct multiple interviews. While in Sweden, well, it's a little bit the Nordics, they take a lot of time, but not that much interviews. While for Slovakia, Bulgaria, for example, they don't take that many interviews, and the application time should be short as well. And then, of course, we have all the other countries. So what I've learned from this data is that job markets in Europe are very different between countries. There are countries with high competition, but also with a lot of potential in the job board market. And that also got me to think. We've talked about candidate experience a lot during these 2 days, mostly about that there's not enough attention for candidate experience. But this data is all available. So as a job board, you could advise clients and candidates about expectations. By, for example, when you post a vacancy as an employer, for, let's say, a sales manager in the UK, you could tell them, well, this is the talent pool. This is the size of your target group. But also, this is the recruitment feasibility. How easy or not easy is it to recruit the occupation you want? But also, they expect 2 interviews, and they expect the procedure to take about 28 days. And if you know all of this, you could prepare your clients or the employers, but also the candidates. So if you would like to talk a little bit more about this or the data we have, please feel free to contact Gert-Jan or myself. We'll be here around all day. And then I've only got one thing left to say, which is thank you.